Sound OG Foundation Capital of the State of Valodium. I'm Simon Valodium, your host, and episode 3 here is starting in the rain. We got a call, a plea for assistance. There's a pair of calves born, twins. Somehow I'm gonna assist. We'll see how that goes. Hey babies. There's another one born while I was shuffling these ones around. Good babies, they're all both brown babies. I bet it's a boy and a girl, but I don't know. Are you a girl? You a good baby girl? Hi. Oh, you cute baby. Oh, yeah. Yeah, baby. Go over there. Oh. This one just got born on the way over from the other ones. Fresh baby. She's got orange face. You cleaning her up, mama. You could do it, baby. You take your first steps. You good, mama? Don't mind me. Just a weirdo with the camera. Get up, baby. You could do it. You could do it. You could do it. I'm not really much help. Oh, you could do it, baby. Oh, this gravity's heavy on this world. Oh, almost. You gotta do it, baby. Oh, there it is. Don't knock her over, mama. Gotta work them muscles. It's about 4 minutes old. These two had to go on an adventure to get over here. Across the whole field and two. One is exhausted. And the other one's hungry. And Mama's just happy to be on grass. Because over there, there's not a lot of grass. They're still eating hay. Over here, there's lots of grass. It's a little chilly and rainy, but it's the right time of year for babies. When I first walked by, it was right after the baby was born. It wasn't moving. I thought it was a dead carcass. But it was just born. The baby's up. It's looking for milk. How do we get the milk from this thing? Give me milk, mama. Hungry. What do I headbutt her? How do I get this milk out of there? She'll figure it out. Oh. These are the waters of Endor. Little streams trickling into this Endoric basin here. This is Endor Sea, the inland sea of Endor. The Endoric basin here. It's a great little collection point of water, and all these trees just love it. Natural kind of giant swale. Here's the ongoing projects. Trying to make the arches so you can still see the crenellation behind. But I'm going to have to raise it a little bit on the front facade. Hopefully it doesn't get in the way. But it almost, from this angle, from here, it almost looks like the first dome is complete. Lots of rain forecasted all day today and tomorrow, so who knows if I'll be able to get any more mortar done. Wisdom's at 3 weeks with her eggs, but it seems like she's given up her motherly ambitions, and she hasn't really been sitting on them, so looks like there probably won't be any chicks from her this time around. So it's Saturday afternoon. It rained all day on Friday and all morning, and it's still kind of spotty forecast and sort of rainy. But I'm going to start with mortar, and because of the forecast I'm going to start with the undercoat just in case we do get some more rain. There's almost a full batch, might even be a full batch of undercoating to do in all these places. And then later when it clears a little, I'll see about doing another batch and then sealing up that last bit of the dome. And that's the goal for today. So for reference, one batch of mortar is 3 buckets of sand and then a half bag of Portland. Put a bag of Portland over a piece of rebar, slice it down the middle, pull the rebar up, and it splits the bag in half. And that makes a batch of mortar. Like so. And another product tip, these blue triple dip PVC gloves are perfect for mortar. You can get them in different sizes. Large size is perfect for me. And if you buy them in bulk, you get 12 pairs, and it's like $3 to $4 a pair. So that's like at least half as much as if you buy them individually at Home Depot, or like a third as much as if you buy them at Lowe's. And neither of them have the exact sizes, so it's great to get 12 at a time, and cheapest. And you can get different kinds of gloves. Like you can use latex gloves, or you can use like those orange painter gloves, but these ones will hold up the best when you're dealing with exposed metal, which will rip the other ones really quick, and you can go through gloves real fast if you're plastering onto sharp metal edges. But this PVC stuff, they'll really hold up to several encounters with sharp metal edges. So I highly recommend these gloves after much trial and error. And yeah, I get those on Amazon. So that didn't really work so well. Most of the underneath was too wet to actually undercoat it, because the water was coming through the top, so I could barely do any of it, and then it was falling, and so then I was just trying to find dry places to put it, because the rain just kept on going. And that was difficult because there's like almost no dry places. But I got a little bit over there, and I was working on this, and then I ended up just putting some inside the entry hall just to get through with the batch. And now it seems like the rain has ceased. So I don't know, I'm gonna take a little break, and maybe if it has cleared I can fill up that gap there. Finally cleared up. The sun's coming out for the first time in days. The second batch went well, nice and thick, no rain. I was able to finish up the dome, and the little kind of arch connection section got a full first coat on that too. Looking like great weather for the next few days. Should be able to get an undercoat and totally finish with that dome section, except for the facade, the front area. And then it'll be all Molly Stark Tower. Sunday morning, and the dome has full coverage, and this little thing over here has just about full coverage. I should be able to get it all finished today. Get an undercoat and an overcoat, and then with 3 layers it'll be mostly done. And then I'll move on over there. But I'm going to start with all of this. Then over here, I'm trying to figure out how to support this floor and how to sort of transition to that arch section there. I put one piece of rebar in, but it's kind of hard to see from here because there's a kind of like a double bend in this arch. The rebar wanted to go off to the right, and because of how the current arch is, it's not exactly an arch, but like 3 bends in it. And so I'm gonna have to figure out how to tie the rebar into all that to make it work for supporting the floor. You can get a better idea what I meant with that rebar. So if you look at that plywood over there, and that's the floor level, you can see this rebar is just about level with the floor level. I haven't put the level on it, but just by visually, that's kind of like how the floor wants to lay. So I'm thinking I'll probably just leave that rebar like that and somehow tie the rest of the metal together. And then I'm trying to figure out if I want to continue this arch over to this point or all the way over to the building. I don't think it's actually necessary to rise the arch up as wide as this to get to the building, because the way that the other arch is, it's already basically buttressing the building. And not that it even really needs it, but and that rebar is only tied to the building there, so yeah, some things I've got to solve up here for this. And then over here, the dome section, part of it, I was able to kind of get with the last bit of the mortar I had. Over here, that's kind of like a second coat on some of it, but most of it's just fresh with 1 coat. And I think the first batch of mortar I'm going to do is just going to be a skim coat over all of this fresh stuff before it gets too warm. But the weather's looking good for the next 2 days, so I shouldn't have any weather issues other than a lot of heat, so I have to keep it wet. And then also down here is a valley with no drainage. So I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is put a second coat on that and then use some kind of like insulation type scraps and then put those in there to fill in the valley until it slopes properly to drain to there, so that I don't have more weight than is necessary there. And then I'll just kind of like put lath over the insulation and get it nice and plastered. So that's the initial idea. So I got 2 batches done Sunday morning before breakfast / lunch, and got all of that undercoated, as well as this here all undercoated. That was all one batch, and then I got 1 batch on top, which got this fin cleaned up a little bit with a 3rd coat on most of that, and then all of this getting a 2nd coat up top, as well as the skim coat all over all this. I just watered it because it's drying out fast in the sun with that thin coat, and this dome is now complete. This first one, I just have to work on the kind of the front face still and the drain and stuff, but the dome aspect itself is complete. 3 coats on all of it, which is sufficient, and the goats are ready to come out. I took the 2 forms off of the corner here, so I stapled the lath to the forms, so that goes a lot faster than doing wire ties. That's why I say I think the wire ties a lot of times don't even matter, because a lot of times I just do it with staples and there are no wire ties and it works just as good. And what was I gonna say? Oh, you can just sort of see what that looks like all raw, because the lath is on the outside and then the rebar isn't covered, so I'll plaster over this side. And then you can see what I'm doing around the rebar. I cut the remesh and then I bend the remesh pieces around the rebar, and then here I'll bend the lath around the rebar as well, and then tie it to itself, just like I did over here, and got like 1 coat on, but it was kind of wet, which is why it's a little bit lighter gray there. And then right here, this piece of remesh, you see there's a big gap there, so I'm going to use a pair of pliers and try to pull that tighter before I mortar it, so it's not kind of messing up the shape of the arch. And then what I've done is I put my 20-foot trusty floor joist over there, which I've used for many bond beams. And I'm going to use that to basically make a straight line on that front face connecting the arches, and use these forms I just pulled to screw onto there to make forms to extend the kind of walls over there. So I'll give you a shot of that after. I'll prep this, prep that, and I'll be ready for more mortar. Monday morning, in the 3rd batch, yesterday evening, I was able to get 2 coats of mortar on this section by starting the first bucket with a batch of mortar, and then by the final bucket that was kind of like dry enough to be able to plaster a second batch over the first, so that it's nice and thick on that side and well covered. And then over here on the floor joist I set up there, I was able to do all of that without a single wire tie, just by screwing the forms to the floor joist. Then I duct tape over the screw holes so that when I take it down, the screw holes aren't filled with mortar, making them difficult to take out. And then I just wanted to get as much, like the edges weren't tight because I hadn't tied them, but I just wanted to get as much on with what I had, with what I could then, basically. So now I'm going through and tying the edges of the lath to the existing structure and kind of like tightening it all up so that I can add another batch and kind of connect those initial blotches of mortar together and to the existing structure. And that's what I'm doing now. Over here, I've used a bunch of the kind of spare pieces of remesh that I've had to cut off various sheets to reinforce this corner here, connecting the pieces of remesh that are bent up from the arch, and then put another piece of rebar up there, which then goes flat at the top, because that's going to be the top kind of bar or kind of bond beam that's going to connect across the 2 arches, which is ideally going to provide tensile strength, like pulling from that direction. How do I point? Like if you're pulling that way, it'll pull from the ground, and then it'll provide buttress to this structure, but it won't pull on it. It'll just kind of push, or it won't even push, it'll just stand there solid so that that structure has support. And then for over there, it'll provide support by pulling from the ground. It probably won't make a lot of sense, but it's kind of confusing how all the tensile and compression strength works. But this is going to be ideal, and it's totally fine that it like flares out a little bit like that up top, because that's what it needed to do to connect. And it'll have mortar up above it so that it'll be like flat along that line, like I said, and then that'll end up tying into that whole mortar that I'm doing over there. So there'll be one line of rebar that goes all the way across and ties into the tower and integrates all of this stuff, and then anchors it in there. So I'll have to keep adding weight to the bottom there. And yeah, really happy with how that's turning out. And after some breakfast, I'll probably maybe get a form up there, or get some lath up there, or both. We'll see. And here on the rebar connection, to like first get it into place, I used like a monkey wrench to pull them together. Is this a monkey wrench? I don't know. Or is it just a wrench? I don't know. I used that tool to squeeze the two pieces of rebar together. And then I used the dinky galvanized wire to hold it in place, which was strong enough to do that. And then once I got it held in place, then I came back through with the heavy duty stainless steel wire, and then got extra like double wrapping on that so that those two bars are not going to pull apart ever. Hopefully never. So this is going to have a drain right here, so I'll leave a space open for the drain. And yeah, I'll probably use one of those panels or something to put a formwork that's triangular up in here. So I got this form up. The problem is that in most places it doesn't get close enough to really act as a form. Like you can see, there's, I don't know if you can see, there's several inches on the bottom between this lath and the form, but in some places it's relatively tight, and then it gives me like a shape to work with to get in line with the gray wall there. So it'll be helpful, even though not necessarily ideal. And so I'm ready for mortar. I also put this drain in. Sometimes a batch of mortar can take like 3 or 4 hours. And that was the case with this last batch. It took like 3 hours probably to prep and like 3 hours to apply, because there's a lot of really slow work where I'm like plastering onto lath with no form. You can see over there like a spot that I didn't get very good, but I got like coverage, but you can like see air through it or splotchiness. I don't know. I assume you can see on the camera. I can't see on the phone, but there's basically some coverage all the way from over there, and then a little bit of sketchy coverage to connect to that middle thing, but mostly it's just supported by the floor joist. But a little bit of mortar to get on there, and I got a surprising amount done over here. The first stuff went over here and it was nice and wet, and a lot of it went through, and then the last stuff went over here, which was pretty dry, and I kind of was able to plaster it onto some exposed lath. So it's a good start, and I didn't get as much anchored on the sides as I wanted, but I got a lot more kind of in the middle than I really expected. And I'm happy with how that's all lined up. And basically the drain's just duct taped on the other side so that it doesn't get mortar in it, basically. And yeah, and then I got a little more over there on the inside of that kind of corner arch thing. So anyways, that was a lot of prep, a lot of mortar, but pretty happy with the result. Today I got a new product. Got some electric temporary fencing for the boys so that I can set up different areas down here for them to graze down all the grasses. They don't have to stay in that one pen and have hay, and they can learn better habits for grazing. So I'm super excited. They don't even know, but they should be excited. So here's the new gut pen. We'll give it a try tomorrow. It took me, it's more complicated than it looks like to set up, honestly, but I think I got it all set up and ready. So I've set up the fence, and the boys, oh, Han might have gotten shocked the first time. Haven't quite been shocked yet. Oh, fuck. Well, that was a disaster for the first try. They went right into it and then fucked it all up. So it's going to take a while for them to get used to this fence. And as they go right through it, and then their horns get caught in it. So they've never really been in this kind of fence. So it'll take a bit of a learning process, I suppose. So they're back in. Han got his first shock. But it takes a while to learn that the fence causes the shock. So he was, just a bit traumatized from getting shocked once. Doesn't know what's happening. And the goats, I've learned, it's like they need about four repeated things to learn something. So they'll probably have to test it roughly 4 times to actually learn that the thing is shocking them. I'm just going to stay down here with them for that duration, hopefully, because otherwise they'll start by like charging right through and then getting all caught up and just wrecking it again. Han's up to 2 shocks. Benedict's just 1. Give him a little hay for bedding over there so they can hang out under the trees. Sweet boys. So I've done a bit of problem solving metalwork up here. So I've got 2 pieces of rebar, one right here and then the other right there, sort of in parallel going that way to bridge the corner, both tying them into that side and then into the arch. Then I got a piece of remesh here, another flat piece of remesh with 6-inch bended up on the one side, and then I got another piece of remesh on this side. And now what I'm going to do is get another one of these 20-foot floor joists and set it up on that corner to this corner as another like fastener thing to support some forms to then make the plastering of that wall go easily. And I think I'll need a cinder block over here somewhere to get it high enough and I can level that floor joist as opposed to having a lot of weight right there, which I wouldn't want. So that's the plan. And then if I can get that on and get that prepped, then I'll do a batch of mortar. The boys broke out of their pen and I don't have time to deal with that right now, so I put them in the other pen. They'll get hungry in the other pen, and then maybe once they're hungry they'll be happier in the pen with grass grazing. But they were just antsy and not appreciating all their food. So that's the plan. Get in the 20-foot floor joist now. Get in the cinder block. Now for the hard part. To get this 20-foot floor joist up through that hole by myself. Disaster has struck. My stapler broke. And the old stapler's broken. Both broken staplers. Then I got that up there, which was even harder than getting that floor joist up there. And so that's stapled up, and I'm like all ready to go. If only my stapler would work. So I gotta make an emergency stapler trip. So by the end of the day on Tuesday, I only got 1 batch done. Did a lot of metal work and prep work though. I got enough up on that form to be able to take that form down tomorrow. I do have to check the backside of that drain to make sure I didn't get any mortar on there. And then there's basically 2 feet of mortar wall on that whole arch up to there. And I left a hole for me to still be able to climb up through. And then just increase the kind of width of the bridge there. And tomorrow, most likely, I'll do that last little bit up to that rebar, bend that remesh. And then all of the other work was over here, doing the metal work. And let's see if you can see. I got some mortar up on here. It's kind of hard to tell with the sun. But basically just enough to get some up there and something to work with. And then tomorrow I'll make a lot of progress on all that. See if you can maybe see better if I climb this. So there's basically some mortar connecting all the way over to there. Though it doesn't like ground on anything over there. So all the weight is basically held by the plywood and the remesh, and it's kind of complicated how the weight is actually distributed, but it's super strong. It could hold a lot more weight, and I'll get all this better integrated tomorrow as well, now that all the formwork is done and I solved this whole riddle of this extending piece of rebar. And yeah, that's all for today. And the boys were so good while I did my batch of mortar. They stayed in here. They cried the whole time, but they didn't escape again. I think they've learned to respect the fence. They're good boys. So Wednesday morning, here's the back side of that form I just pulled. You can see what I was talking about with the duct tape. Actually forms like a star pattern with the duct tape over the PVC. How the wetter mortar went through initially, this down here, and got several inches thick. And then that part is the part where I was just plastering the mortar over the lath, and then up here is where I was able to plaster right up to the form. So now I can very easily fill up all those gaps, smooth it out, and then I'll probably take a couple batches to even out. The first batch I'll do wet so that it smears over all that really well, connects it, bonds with it well, and then later on I'll do a drier type batch or bucket, like to fill in the gap in the middle where it's recessed. And the wet one will help me to get the drain to drain properly as well. Just got one little hole there. And then right now I'm just making sure this is all level. Bend this remesh down and then prep a line of lath for this, which will basically just be the front of this, just a low kind of horizontal line. Today, one of the previous tenants is picking up a whole bunch of free stuff from an estate sale, plus another fireplace, and so I just cleaned up these two bays with a shed. I'm gonna load them up with stuff, and I'm thinking they might be good for the Molly Stark Tower once it's done. We shall see. Minotauri, newly dubbed. And his brother crossing the road, Elias. They just got names. Why did the chicken cross the road anyways? Or he's standing in the road. He's not even crossing. Oh, he's crossing, alright. But why? I don't know. Also, I got to name those 3 cows. The 2 twins are Auburn and Bronner, and they are boy and girl. I was correct. And then the girl is May May. Minotauri! May May got named after a Chinese lady in Taipan. This guy's Rontaru. How's it going, Rontaru? He might be the father of Elias and Minotauri. Getting that stuff took a lot longer than I expected, but got a nice wood stove over here in this valley. I filled up it with insulation pieces, the white pieces, and then I save all the little insulation scraps and foam scraps that I make, and then used all those to fill all the little holes, and then 1 can of foam, filled up the rest of it, and then there's just 1 piece of lath over that, and it's sloped to drain. So the next batch of mortar, I'll get a coat on that, so that valley should be ideally sealed before the next rain. Then over here, I finished up the last of the lath work on that arch, so I should be able to get pretty good coverage over there, as well as the back side of that, and some other little pieces where I got some things in. I extended this piece of rebar onto that one, so this is a kind of horizontal line. I was thinking of crenelating this, but I'm just going to keep it horizontal, nice and simple, and I might put 1 more piece of rebar in before I get to mortar, but just about there. So by the end of the day Wednesday, I was able to get 2 batches done, regardless of the late start. So I got the kind of the line on top of the dome done, more coverage on the kind of arch above the 2 arches, or the opening there, more coverage on the left side, and then I'll cut and show you up top. So I was able to get 2 batches up on this whole wall that had the form, get really good coverage and smooth out most all that. I'll probably just take 1 more to finish, and 2 batches on all this. I got 2 batches down here. The second batch I took out the things that was holding it down and got really good coverage on that, so that should drain properly now. And then over here I filled in just about all the gaps on this arch slash beginning of the wall, and the whole wall ends up turning into like a bond beam essentially. Yeah, basically coverage on all that, and some of the areas on that are pretty thick, like at least 2 inches thick. And yeah, really successful day. I buy my eggs by the 550 pounds. One thing about this stainless steel rebar ties is that it's so strong that you can't really use tin snips to cut it. Well, you can, but it like damages the tin snips, so it's better to cut it with another tool. and you can leave it out in the rain because it's stainless steel. I realized with that galvanized stuff, it's definitely galvanized, and you shouldn't leave it out in the rain, even though it looks like stainless steel initially. So I do like this. I'll probably end up switching just to stainless steel. I'll just find a lower gauge for the easier wire ties. I really do like this 17 gauge galvanized stuff, so I still recommend that, but I think it's better than the traditional rebar ties, definitely. But I'm gonna look for a lower gauge stainless steel to replace that 17 gauge galvanized wire tie steel stuff once I go through that quarter mile of it. Check out this little hack. I wanted to squeeze these together. This piece of rebar going across only has, oh wait, no, it's got a pretty decent bite. But anyways, it's like up from the other ones. I want to squeeze them together. So use the wrench and then tie the wrench with the galvanized wire tie. And now I can come around and get this really good on the corner there with the stainless steel. Like so. And the stainless steel stuff is so strong with tensile strength that you can really torque it with the wrench to like way stronger than if you try to torque this stuff, and it'll break with a certain tension. I don't know the exact tensile strength of the stainless steel stuff, but it's really strong. So what I've done up here is I finished tying off this rebar at the height I want it, and kind of brought that one up a little because now I need to bend the remesh up to come up to this level like it is over here. And then once I've got all the remesh up, I can add the lath, and then should be able to kind of work on this whole horizontal floor section. I don't think I'm going to add more horizontal forms like that. That's kind of tricky to do, but I might change my mind. It did go pretty quickly. This is the haul from yesterday. There's that wood stove. Looks pretty nice. It's got some cool features. A couple cabinets might go in the Molly Stark Tower. I was on the fence about this thing because I've already got a number of sinks, but might get used. And look, another sink. Okay, back to work. So this little section took me many hours, surprisingly long. I got one piece of lath up over there. It's not all tied up, but I've got kind of like this bit here ready for mortar, and so I'm about to do a batch of mortar to tile this in. I think I put that piece of rebar there in since the last video, which should help to connect something over there, but it also really helped to pick the remesh up there, which I wanted. And it makes it a little bit too high right here, but hopefully I can figure that out somehow. Probably honestly would have been better if I would have put that piece of rebar under the other one, but anyways, getting on to mortar, which will extend the floor level here a bit. Alright, Thursday evening, final update for episode 3. I got coverage on this whole transition section, which basically just took me all day. As far as doing metal work, like 5 or 6 hours, and then just one batch of mortar took me a really long time. And then just kind of like even the back of this out, and on the front of it as well. I don't know if you can see, but that's all. There were some comments last video about the economics of it. This episode's really long, but just suffice to say that buying sand by the truckload is essential, and then mixing your own cement, buying the Portland by the pallet, and everything else in bulk. I've allocated so far like $5,000 for the ferrous cement of the Molly Stark Tower. I wouldn't be surprised if I spend another $2,000 though. I have kind of extravagant plans for it as it grows, and it's basically a double dome because the floor is basically a full dome, and then it's going to have a dome above that, and probably crenellation, so I'll probably go over budget. And I can talk more about economics in a future episode if people are interested. But that's all for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Here's the final shot of the front. I cleaned up that top line. Just about finished getting coverage on that left side. There's just a little bit left. I'll have to cut out the drain today before rain tomorrow. And then just a little more coverage on the right. So that's all for this week.